Well, hello and welcome to episode 10 of Making Minds. And it's pretty good to hit the milestone of episode 10. I think there's probably going to be at least 50 episodes in this series, so we've got a ways to go, but it's a pretty good start. Now, in the last episode, I postulated that a corporation, and specifically NASA, could be considered to be a living organism, much like you and I. And obviously, we wouldn't normally think of NASA as being a living creature with a mind and a body because it doesn't look anything like us. So I thought what I would do in this episode is to run through a bunch of the properties that a living thing normally has and try and show you what the equivalent property is in a corporation like NASA. So we'll start with something really basic like survival instinct. So in the same way that you and I need food and water, corporations, one of the things they need is money. And NASA grows when it gets more money, and it contracts if it gets less money, and if it had no money, it would effectively die. So money is one of the things that keeps a corporation going. And NASA seems to have a very strong instinct. So every year it's at Congress, and it's always fundraising, doing outreach programs trying to justify its own existence. And one of the things I want to mention is, even though I think there are parallels between, a human being, for example, and a corporation, they're not going to be exact. So, for example, take something like a body. Now, you and I, we have a body of, flesh and blood, whereas the body of a corporation really means all of the space that it takes up. So in the case of NASA, part of its body could be considered to be the hangars, part of it's the actual buildings themselves where the people which are kind of like the cells of NASA reside. The rockets are part of the body. So the body of NASA actually is highly distributed and fragmented, but nevertheless it's the physical part that makes up its being. And similarly, the mind of NASA, the thing which does intelligent processing, is somewhat hybrid and distributed in the sense that it includes all of the human brains in NASA. It also includes all of the computer systems that make up NASA. And of course they're all linked together kind of via the nervous system of NASA, which would be a collection of optic fibers, radio connections, microwaves, etc. So I think it does have a mind, it does have a body, but they're both fragmented and highly distributed. What about, the equivalent of IQ? Well, NASA is far more intelligent than any single human being. If you take as a measure of intelligence the ability to solve a very tough problem. So one very tough problem is land man on the moon. And no one person could ever figure that out, but NASA did. So if a human being's got an IQ of, between 100 and 150, NASA's IQ is probably, 10,000, something really huge like that. What about the way that NASA communicates? Now, human beings' communication is optimized for communicating with other human beings and animals. So you're not going to expect a corporation like NASA to use voice as its primary mechanism. And if you think about it, NASA's will mainly communicate with other corporations. So if you look at how corporations communicate, they communicate in highly parallel forms. Sometimes they communicate legally through their legal departments. Sometimes they will issue press releases. Sometimes they will engage at the executive level or between the sales teams. So usually there's a lot of strands of communication taking place at any one time, all in parallel, all relatively focused. But it is theoretically possible to speak to NASA and for NASA to speak to us, because there will be a spokesperson for NASA, which is kind of like an interface between human beings and the much larger corporation. A few other things. What about things like goals and planning? Well, clearly NASA's primary goals are relative to space exploration, and at any one moment in time it has several goals related to, for example, landing on Mars, going to Venus, studying the asteroid belt, so on and so forth. So certainly has a lot of goals. Some of those goals are in the very, very early stages, like seed ideas. Some of them are in full bore execution, like Mars lander probe, for example. A few other things. Take sex. Bet you didn't think I was going to talk about that. Now, human beings, obviously, you know, we have sexual reproduction in order to create new variations of humans. And corporations, in many senses, have a richer sex life than humans. Because corporations can form new corporations by mergers, acquisitions, spin-offs, startup companies, so on and so forth. So there's actually a very rich number of ways where corporations can merge, splinter off, and form startups. So I say that is the corporate version of sex. Now the stuff that's actually pretty tough, which I'm going to probably talk about next time, is NASA conscious? And does NASA have emotions? So I'm going to save talking about that more complicated part for episode 11. So once again, to recap, I think that it's instructive to look at all the various kinds of things that you think of as being related to a human being, like a body, senses, communication. And I think you can see how corporations have a very similar set, even though, of course, they're not going to match one to one. So I look forward to seeing you in episode 11. Bye.